This is Need to Know with Jeff Greenfield, Maria Hinojosa, Scott Simon, and this week, Ray Suarez.
On this edition, power to the people.
Now you have us.
A bold experiment in California puts the district map in the hands of citizens.
It's all about power. It's the power of the citizen to influence her life, her community, by electing representatives that really are going to be representative.
Also, in East Harlem, the people are deciding how their money gets spent.
This is the process that made me say, I am going to be the voice of this community.
And from American Voices, finding opportunity.
There are some mayors in this country who wait for years and never get that invitation.
Next, on Need to Know. Thanks for joining us. On this edition of Need to Know, we focus on experiments in democracy, from one end of the nation to the other. Voters making decisions typically left to lawmakers. We begin in California, where a Citizens Commission is now in charge of redistricting. That work, done every 10 years after the census is taken, is normally left to state legislators. The fact is, many lawmakers were redrawing electoral districts to increase their own chances for re-election and to punish their political opponents, a process known as gerrymandering. Now it's being left to that Citizens Commission to figure out. The result? Some of those running for re-election this year, who used to have safe seats, suddenly find themselves on the hot seat.
On a recent Saturday morning in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, hundreds of families gather for a yearly ritual. Today is the opening day of the local Little League season, and it seems like just about everybody in town has shown up. Among those in the crowd, the local congressman, Democrat Brad Sherman. This year, he's up for re-election, and an event like this is an irresistible campaign stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Brad Sherman.
By most accounts, people here like Sherman.
Hello, I'm Brad Sherman.
Nonetheless, after 15 years in office, he's fighting for his political life. The reason? A new experiment in democracy has radically changed California's congressional map, throwing many once safe incumbents, like Sherman, into competitive races.
The system before was fundamentally broken because what the legislature would do is, between Democrats and Republicans, they would collude between themselves and give each sweetheart seats that would carve out any potential challengers, that would remove voter constituencies who they thought wouldn't vote for them.
Kathy Fung is the executive director of California Common Cause. She led the effort in California to strip the state legislature of the power to draw district lines.
It's a process that is so self-interested and so disregards the change in demographics that we knew that redistricting had to change.
In 2008 and later in 2010, Fung and her allies put two propositions on the ballot. Those propositions gave the power to draw this year's voting map to a group of ordinary people.
Now you have us.
That group, seen here in a public service announcement, is known as the California Citizens Redistricting Commission.
We need your help to understand the complexities in your community.
And they really are ordinary people. One commissioner is a retired high school principal, another a stay-at-home mom, and yet another owns a couple of neighborhood bookstores.
I saw this as a historic opportunity to participate in a very significant way in something that would change the political landscape in California.
Jean Rea is a member of the commission that drew the lines for California.
Why should people care about redistricting?
They should care because it's all about power. It's the power of the citizen to influence her life, her community, by electing representatives that really are going to be representative.
Rea, a Democrat, runs her family's insurance agency. Her interest in politics goes back to her childhood, when she watched her dad break political barriers in her hometown of San Gabriel, California.
This was in 1958. I think he was probably the first, or at least very close to the first Mexican-American to run for city council.
Of the more than 36,000 Californians who applied to be on the commission, Rhea was the first one chosen in a lottery-style drawing.
The first 8, the lucky 8 as we call ourselves, were chosen by lottery, ping pong balls. And then those 8 subsequently selected the remaining 6 commissioners. So that got us to the 14.
The first 8 commissioners were chosen by lottery to ensure there was no political manipulation of the selection process. The remaining 6 were chosen so that the commission would total 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 independents. Steps were also taken to ensure the group would be ethnically diverse.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I hope by the end of the summer you've revolutionized voting in California. A lot of us hope that.
Once formed, the commission held hearings all around the state, asking the public how they'd draw California's legislative map. Transparency was key. Web videos were posted of every session.
This is truly an historic moment, so it's going to go down in the history books.
Some 20,000 people showed up or provided testimony to the commission through one way or another. And the hearing rooms that I went to, every single one of them was packed to the hilt. I mean, this was a level of excitement that you usually reserve for rock concerts and you know, the Rose Bowl.
Most importantly, the commission was expressly forbidden from gerrymandering in favor of incumbent politicians.
And there's no consideration of who the person is there now, who might be there, who's expressed interest in running, or what any political party has to say.
One thing that has long concerned advocates for government reform about gerrymandering is how minority groups have been split between districts, crippling their ability to vote as a bloc.
When incumbents draw their own lines, a lot of communities find themselves dissected for no other reason than they don't vote a certain way and an incumbent doesn't want them in their district. And so what many communities found was that they were split into 3 and 4 pieces.
For an example of that, critics say you need to look no further than the San Fernando Valley, home to Congressman Brad Sherman and another Democrat, Congressman Howard Berman.
Can you give me an example of something that happened in the last redistricting that was ugly?
Well, probably one of the ugliest things was in Los Angeles with 2 congressional seats. Congressman Howard Berman largely ran the redistricting, and his colleague Brad Sherman in the neighboring district, both of them had growing Latino populations.
Raphael Sonnenschein is a political scientist who runs the Pat Brown Institute of Public Affairs at California State University in Los Angeles. According to Sonnenschein, in 2001, Sherman and Berman agreed to split the Valley's Latino community between their districts in order to ensure that neither would lose to a Latino candidate.
In theory, one of them could have had to move aside to create a Latino seat, but instead, after considerable fighting between the 2 of them, they preserved both of their seats with smaller Latino populations.
Here's the map that was drawn in 2001. This is Brad Sherman's current district. It's about 42% Latino. Next door is the district represented by Howard Berman. It's about 57% Latino. Now, here's the new map created by the Citizens Commission for 2012. It creates 2 new districts. One is 69% Latino and is expected to elect a Latino representative this fall. The second is now 27% Latino.
Communities have shifted in Los Angeles. So populations that may have been dominant at one time, now that's switching over. There are a multitude of groups in LA County, and the job was to make sure that everyone was protected.
Given the Valley's new political landscape, this year, Brad Sherman and Howard Berman have decided to go head-to-head in the district with fewer Latino voters. Both Congressman Berman and Congressman Sherman adamantly deny there was any deal back in 2001 to split the Latino vote. And Sherman says the commission's reforms were long overdue.
I think in the San Fernando Valley, the commission drew 2 logical districts and gave the Valley 2 congressional districts. I think that made a lot of sense.
About 20 miles away in South Los Angeles, long a home to many African Americans, the commission engaged in a fight which led some to charge the commission with gerrymandering of its own. Jody Filkins-Weber is an attorney and one of the Republican members of the commission. Of the 14 commissioners, she was one of 2 who refused to approve the congressional maps drawn by the group.
Los Angeles County, obviously, given the population density, was very difficult to take a look at. And there were a lot of factors, a lot of input, a lot of disagreement, and a high racial attitude from a lot of people.
South LA has 3 congressional districts traditionally represented by African Americans. But in recent years, the population has become increasingly Asian and Latino. Some in the African American community were concerned about losing seats in Congress.
So I urge you retaining the character of the districts as they currently exist.
At a series of hearings last April, Filkins-Weber says she noticed something. Several people kept asking the commission to maintain the existing districts favoring the incumbents, especially that of Representative Maxine Waters.
I hope that you, the commission, can keep the 35th congressional district together.
We must leave Inglewood intact. Inglewood is within the 35th congressional district.
Filkins-Weber suspected many of the district residents had been urged to testify by Waters. Concerned, Filkins-Weber questioned several of them.
I do have one question. Excuse me, sir. Yes. Have you attended a recent rally from Ms. Maxine Waters regarding this issue?
Not recently.
Filkins-Weber's actions led to charges of racial bias from her fellow commissioners.
I have been biting my tongue for some time, and the only time that those questions have been asked have been in downtown LA and to folks making testimony that fit a particular demographic profile.
We need to make a determination of the evidence that's before us and determine the veracity of the individuals that are coming before us.
In the end, the commission preserved 3 districts in South LA with large African American populations, favoring incumbents like Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Later, the news organization ProPublica reported there had been a plan by incumbent Democrats in California to manipulate the commission's hearings.
Did the commission get played?
Were we played? Depends. They didn't play me. I knew what they were doing, and whether or not other commissioners used that testimony to their own advantage to make recommendations regarding district lines may certainly have occurred.
I have absolutely no doubt that the Democratic Party did everything they could to organize people to participate in the process. I also know for a fact that the Republicans did the exact same thing. Not everybody got everything that they wanted, but I think what people really walked away from this process feeling was, I lined up for hours to speak to this commission because I believe that they would listen to me. And in fact, when I look at that set of maps, I see that they were listening. And ultimately the maps, I think, outside pundits would say, were fair to all sides.
It's safe to assume one person who didn't get any favorable treatment from the commission was incumbent Congressman Brad Sherman, now fighting to hold on to his seat. After today's ceremony, Sherman hands out combs, a reference to a joke he likes to make about his receding hairline. And he hopes a pocket-sized reminder to vote for him come November.
So you and Congressman Howard Berman have been sort of thrown into this race. Is that fair?
Sure, it's fair. It's called democracy. You got to run for Congress every 2 years. They've drawn a logical district. It certainly makes my life more difficult and more complicated, but democracy isn't designed to make the politician or elected official's life simple.
Another power to the people experiment is taking place in New York City, with some taxpayers getting a much bigger say about how their tax dollars are being spent. It's called participatory budgeting. Keoka Jackson is waiting to hear if she's won her share of more than $1 million. And no, she's not playing the lottery. She's waiting to find out which community projects are going to be funded by the City of New York.
I love being a member of my community and felt like this was a way to be more involved and make decisions.
Jackson's not alone. She's one of hundreds in East Harlem trying to determine how their government tax dollars are spent. In this case, $1.5 million.
The projects that I put priority on were things that made people feel safe.
We've asked for the lighting to be upgraded because it's very dangerous at night.
The library needs more laptops.
First introduced in 1989, it's a growing movement, says Selena Sue, a political science professor at Brooklyn College.
Participatory budgeting started in the city of Porto Alegre, Brazil, and since then, it has expanded to over 1,000 cities around the world.
While it's growing globally, Sue says New York is the second city in the United States to try it.
The city of Chicago started it 1 year before New York, and it started with just one alderman, and he turned over his discretionary budget to his constituents, and he was re-elected in virtually a landslide.
I'm the council member,
Melissa Mark Viverito is Jackson's councilwoman. She's one of 4 city council members allocating funds to her constituents. Last year, Mark Viverito received about $5 million in discretionary funds.
It really is a way of civically engaging people, of making democracy work, of giving people a voice and taking ownership for what changes they would like to see happen in their community.
Especially when that trust has been broken. In 2009, Miguel Martinez, former New York City council member, was sentenced to 5 years in prison for pocketing more than $100,000 of discretionary funds.
These are all actually reasonable.
Now Mark Viverito and other council members want to be more transparent and involve the community.
My community is historically a disenfranchised community, and to see people say, you know, I'm not apathetic, it's just that I don't believe government is speaking for me. But when these opportunities are presented, people step up to the plate.
And Jackson did just that.
This was our way of saying that these are our concerns and not someone else speaking for us. So we were able to say, this is what we want to see happen.
Jackson, a facilities manager, and more than 65 others spent months working closely with city agencies to figure out exactly what their community needs and how much each project would cost.
The process itself, it was very interesting to be able to speak to the chief of staff of the Parks and Recreation Department, and he shed a lot of light on, what was going on in New York City, what was going on in our community, what projects were already on the table, what funding was already happening.
They came up with 29 proposals, including one dear to Jackson, the renovation of 2 dilapidated basketball courts.
This basketball court is so important because they have a whole community of youth, and it's really nowhere for them to go. This is kind of like a safe haven for them.
So we need people to be involved.
Councilwoman Mark Viverito says residents like Jackson often know what the community needs better than their representatives do.
There might be things that I'm aware of and things that I may not be aware of. So it's always good to get that additional voice and consideration from those that I represent. And this is a mechanism that really allows that firsthand account, experience, and decision making.
Please come in and sign in right here.
Last month, more than 1,000 people from the community turned out to vote on what projects would be funded. And a week later, the big announcement was made. The winners revealed.
And finally, we're going to get money for our public library. Aguilar.
The day ended with a twist. Jackson's project to renovate the basketball court was not a winner, but the city's Parks Department says it's now seeking to fund the renovation of one of the basketball courts. As for Jackson, now more than ever, she's convinced of the value of participating.
This is the process that made me say, I am going to be the voice of this community. I am going to, from this day forward, I am going to make sure that I have a say in what goes on in this community.
This week online, participate in our weekly poll. If you had $1 million for community improvement, how would you spend it? Let us know what you think and why. Go to pbs.org/need-to-know.
This is Need to Know.
And now, American Voices, our recurring segment featuring diverse Americans with diverse points of view. This week, San Francisco's first Chinese-American mayor, Ed Lee, on his American experience.
When I was growing up, my father was a cook, as many Chinese immigrant families are. My mom was a garment worker, and we all lived in public housing. I remember some Christmases where we didn't get gifts, but what we did was, my brother and sister, we'd go down in the basement and we would have fun finding the most ridiculous gifts we can give to each other. And that's how we kind of made do with not having a whole lot during those early years. And we were all very proud of our culture, but knowing too that there was friction. You know, people would use phrases and would do things that you kind of felt uncomfortable with. And then I'd ask, you know, why did my dad get sworn at by some customers? And my mom would say, hush, we don't talk about that. It's a city that actually established laws that prevented Chinese who had immigrated here in the late 1800s and early 1900s from becoming citizens, from owning property, from even leaving the boundaries of the Chinatown. Later on in law school, read all the cases and realized that's part of our American experience, is facing these laws, but having the freedom to change them. The people that come to this city have so much hope. Everybody really wants the city to succeed because of its diversity. In Chinese, for example, it's Gamsan, it's the Gold Mountain City. It's the place where generations of Chinese came to find gold, to find opportunity. Within an hour of my swearing in, there was an invitation from President Obama to come to the White House because there was President Hu Jintao of People's Republic of China was being hosted at a state dinner. And he let me know that it was special to have the first Chinese-American mayor in San Francisco come to the White House to celebrate. There are some mayors in this country who wait for years and never get that invitation.
That's it for this week's program. Don't forget to participate in our weekly poll at pbs.org/need-to-know. And for election coverage from other PBS programs, please visit pbs.org/election2012. Next week on Need to Know.
Hey, he's not resisting. Why are you guys using excessive force on him?
As you arrived there, what was the very first thing you heard?
I heard Anastasia screaming and asking for help.
He was being tased for several seconds and wasn't moving. I think I witnessed someone being murdered.
Crossing the line at the border on the next Need to Know. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching.